Kawasaki, baby! Just before this video kicks off, guys, True Rally are holding another rally to the Nürburgring in April, and there are only 4 spaces left. True Rally is a driving holiday for true car enthusiasts, and they are arranging a trip to the Nürburgring. They include the ferry, all the hotels with trackside balcony rooms, breakfast and dinner on all days, Nürburgring lap, all activities, evening entertainment, all parking, personal photography, vehicle graphics, and so much more, all in the price. You will get a fully downloadable GPS of the whole way through a meticulously planned route through Europe. Do you fancy a weekend away with 40 other petrol heads or with modified cars? Then head over to truerally.co.uk to see some more information. Good morning everybody, good morning everybody. In the last video of the RELIANT, we actually got it started, which was unbelievable. I'm so happy we got it started. It wasn't starting on its own accord. We had to hold up a fuel tank on the fuel tank, and it just wasn't starting on its own accord. Today, my goal is to get it started on its own accord. So we're going to put the fuel tank back in the car, and we're going to run all the fuel lines. Let's put the fuel pump underneath the car, because one issue is, yes, the fuel pump works, but is it going to work when it's used as an inline pump instead of a gravity fed pump? And is it going to work when we're going to be tripling, if not quadrupling, the length of the fuel lines? There's only one way to find out. So right now the fuel pump is literally just sat here on the engine, and we had it drip fed from a funnel. So we need to relocate this, and we need to put this underneath the car, and we need to obviously redo all the wiring and redo all the fuel lines. So I've got a bunch of fuel line here. But first of all, let's put in the fuel tank, because obviously we need somewhere to draw some fuel from. It's always hilarious jacking this car over, because it literally weighs nothing. So if you don't get the jack perfectly in the centre of the diff, it just like rolls to one side. So you've got to jack it up, and then you've got to put a jack stand underneath, push the car with your hand, push it with your hand, and then put the jack stand under the other side. Honestly, it's absolutely hilarious. Now the fuel tank is literally just held in by 2 13mm nuts either side. It's honestly so easy. Oh, this is so annoying. I've bent it back to get it out, so I can't bend it forward and get the nut on. I just need a thread. I feel like that might pop off. Fuck, tighten it quick, give me 13 mil. Okay, so this is the fuel pump, and this is where it literally sits on the engine. So it's powered from this plug here on the loom, and we have the filter on top, and then it goes straight into the carb. So what actually happens is, imagine this is the fuel tank on the bike. The fuel tank on the bike sits just above here, and it is gravity fed from this line, from the fuel tank into the pump. The pump squirts it straight into the carb. What we're going to do is, we need to relocate that, and we're going to put that underneath the car as close to the pump as possible. Therefore, it's got least distance to draw the fuel from the fuel tank, and we're going to put this pump as low as possible. So then what's going to happen is, hopefully, the pressure from that, the vacuum from that, will draw the fuel, and since that this is lower than the fuel tank, it will just constantly then be gravity fed. So it shouldn't really have to work that hard, because the fuel is constantly going to keep going down into that fuel pump, because that's how science works. And then send a big line all the way from the back of the car up to the carb. So there's 2 things that we're hoping for here. One is that science actually is science, and that's how gravity and water works. Thanks, Bert Wanker. So we're hoping that that's actually going to work, and it's going to draw from the tank into the fuel pump. And then second thing we're hoping for is that the fuel pump is strong enough to pump it all the way from the back up to the carb. I can't see why it wouldn't, but again, we're going to have to just find out. So first of all, I'm going to get underneath the car, and I'm going to see how we're going to mount that fuel pump. Right, so I'm going to run it. I think it's best to run it here. The fuel tank's up there. I think I'm going to try it here like this. Now, I'm going to run it exactly how it's sat in the bike. So from here, I'm going to run a fuel line from here to the top of the tank where it draws. It's a bit annoying it doesn't draw at the bottom. It actually has to be fed up through a filter, which again, I'm a little bit worried about. I wish there was just a push on fit right at the bottom of the tank, and therefore it will just gravity feed into here, but it's actually going to draw it up, which is annoying as well. And then from here, I'm going to send this line up there into the carb, And then all we got to do is just lengthen the wires to this connector, and then we're going to start it and see if it works. Right, so the fuel line we've got is too tight, so it's really hard to get. I've managed to get it onto the carb, but it's even harder to get onto the fuel tank, the fuel pump. So I'm just going to leave it in some boiling water, and hopefully that'll just soften it up enough so I can squeeze it over. More wiring. It feels like that's all I've been doing recently with the Suzuki, so we're doing some more wiring. We're going to chop the connector off each side of the loom. Just going to run some dual core wire all the way down. Again, really super easy stuff. We've not crimped it because just in case you need to make any changes, what we've got, basically we just cut the connector off, and we've got power and we've got ground going through a twin core cable. We could have just ground it up here, but I'd rather choose to stop wiring. And it's going to go right to the top, and then that comes through to here where we've got power and then ground. We're going to put a little bit of rubber just between there just so they don't touch, but that should be fine now. So when we power up the bike now, the fuel pump should prime. So we're going to turn the ignition on and we're going to go and see if it's drawing fuel. We've got power, kill switch is on. If this doesn't start, I'm going to have to see if the fuel is actually pumping. So let's pull the choke and let's see. And how we can do that is we can literally just pull the fuel line off from the carb and just crank it and see if it's getting fuel pressure. But to be fair, we might have to crank it a while, so it's gonna have to fill all that line. It's going to draw it from the tank, fill all the line up, and then create enough fuel pressure. So we've got the fuel line here, so we're just going to sacrifice a little bit of fuel. No, we're not getting no fuel. So I've gone underneath and I've took the fuel line off, and sometimes it either pushes like literally the tiniest amount of fuel through or like none at all, so it's just not strong enough to pull it through, is it, Ron?
No, I think this is a gravity fed pump.
So this is just being gravity fed right into the pump now, so this is just going to reenact what it will
fuel tank.
A fuel tank. Again, Ron's been another fuel tank.
On the fuel tank.
This fuel pump's such a fucking pain. Oh, maybe that's why
You have the kill switch off.
I have the kill switch off. Right, well that's it then, isn't it? That's the issue.
Yeah.
More fuel tanks to buy, yay! Not yay. I'm sick of spending money. Right, come on guys, come and get in the video.
No, they've been on my face.
So these are Ronnie's kids, and they heard that I've got a YouTube channel.
You're his fans.
Do they talk about me a lot, Ron?
Every day.
Kind of looks like one of those big cameramen. That's his cameramen, okay?
Right, okay.
They're easily men, but their heads are cameras.
Right, okay.
Right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of
So as you can see here, this is what we've got to do. We've got to get a fuel tank, or we need to modify this fuel tank, and we just need to put something going down so it gravity feeds the pump. But just an example of how well it starts now, listen to this. So we've literally got the button here, and we're going to go. So that's great. Kawasaki, baby! Okay, so we can't unfortunately get that problem finished today with the fuel tank. I think what we're going to do, we're going to use the old fuel tanks. It's just easier, and we're going to clean it all out. And Ronnie knows some things where you can drill a hole through, and then you can kind of just like bolt it through the other side with washers if you can get in there. Worst case, what we can do is we can just weld like a push fit connector on. It's going to be scary if it's a fuel tank, but we'll have to just make sure we clean it out properly and clean it all. And that's going to be our fuel system pretty much complete. So I'm happy with that. We're going to move on now. We're going to move on now to the cables. So we actually need to get everything. We need to get all the cables working with the original cables or the original pedals in the car. Now, originally my first idea of this was just to try to make this kind of fit the old pedal. But I've had an idea. Now you can actually buy cable crimps, cable clamps. Yeah, cable clamps. So you put one end of the cable in the other, one end of the other cable, and clamp them down. And that way we've got the correct end of the cable for the bike and the correct end of the cable for the car. And I'm just thinking, we've not got them there. What we have got there, and what we've got right in front of me, is a welder. Why don't we just cut the two cables and weld them together. And then we have the cable which is correct on the throttle, and then we have the cable which is correct on the bike, and we have a working cable. Does that make sense? Does it not make sense? It makes perfect fucking sense. Here we have the cable which goes into the Reliant. This pushes into the bracket, and that pushes into the throttle cable perfectly. So obviously it would sit like this. So well, let's just pull this out, cut a little bit of this end off. So we've got a bare bit of bare cable, and then let's just weld it to the other cable. If that doesn't work, then we need to do this anyway, and so we can use a cable connector. So let's just cut the end off. Perfect. And then from there, this is the cable for the bike, this is the cable for the car. We just literally weld them together there, bang bang, and then there's our cable. It's gonna work, right? So I'm gonna drill a hole in the firewall so we can send this cable through, because the old cable came up here somewhere. We need to come through there. So we'll just drill a hole through here, send it through here, and we'll just have it something like that. Right, so I've got the cable off the bike engine here, and I'm gonna cut it, and we're just gonna send it. I think. So your own time yet? The plan is that I have cut this cable here, cut that cable here, cut this cable here. Now the plan is literally, I want a little bit of slack, that's on full tight, and I'm literally just gonna grip them, and I'm gonna weld them together, and that literally should be our cable, hopefully. Right, so instead of welding it, Ronnie suggested for the time being, just to make sure it all works and everything before we fully weld it, and he thinks it's just gonna blow through it anyway if we weld it. I'll put it on a really low setting. So I've literally just got one of these cable connectors, like the wire ones. I've took the insulation off, not because for any reason, just because it was easier to put the wires through. So as you can see now, we've got the cable connector, and I'm literally just going to crimp that like that. Cool. Right, let me press the throttle. Let's see if that's working. I mean, that's working. It don't feel great, but it is working. That's working. I've got a cable. No way. Well, let's do the same to the clutch. This is going to be fucking driving. With the clutch, we're going to have to do something a little bit different. This is the stock clutch here, which is fine. That goes underneath and it goes to the pedal. What we're going to have to do is, but because this clutch wants to pull that way and this clutch wants to pull that way, we're going to have to do something different. So we just attach them together, I don't think it's going to pull it right. So we need to kind of make something so it pulls that way, even though we're pulling that way. So I've kind of wanted, if we can route it around here, if we can make a bracket and route it around here so the cable comes around and actually pulls. Once it pulls this way, it's going to actually pull it that way. That's perfect. So I've just gone into the back just to try to find something that will work. This is an exhaust clamp, and I think this will work perfectly. So if we chop off the ends and flatten this, we can drill a hole through there, and we've got one there like that, and then one on the other side if this cable fits through, which I'm 99% sure it will. And then we're going to have the right kind of pulling force in the right direction. So let's chop this up, let's straighten it out, let's drill it, and let's see if I'm as smart as I think. And then that'll be it'll go something like this. And then when we're pulling the cable, it's going to stop the actual cable from twisting. That's the idea. So let's drill some holes and let's see if that works. Now I'm already a little bit worried about this because A, the clutch lines are like twice as thick as the throttle cables, and B, the clutch lines need pulling about 10 times harder than the throttle cables. But nonetheless, we're going to give it a go. Annoyingly, it was fine, and then I welded it more, and then I blew through it and broke the cable. So I honestly don't have much wiggle room anymore, like literally. But this is a heavy clutch, so I feel like this might pull out, to be honest. But there's only one way to go and find out. Let's go and press the clutch. So I've tried multiple different things for this clutch line, and I've been spending all morning on it, running to tool station, picking something up, doesn't work. Running to tool station, picking something up, it doesn't work. And this was my final straw. I've got a massive crimp connector, and that's actually strong enough to hold the clutch. It really is strong enough to hold the clutch, which is good. When I pull the clutch line, it's fine. But there is still just way too much movement in the clutch. There's way too much slack in the cable. Like, it's pulling the clutch, but like barely. Do you know what I mean? So when I come up here, it's pulling the clutch, but it's just not enough to engage it. So I think for that I'm gonna have to kind of recruit some professional help because I'm struggling here with that. I've messaged MK Sports Car and I'm gonna message Race Car Wings and see if there's anything that they can make up that will work, because right now I'm really struggling. Right, so just before this video ends, I just had an idea. Why are we fucking around trying to make it as much into a car as possible when it's not? We're using a bike, we've got a bike engine. Why don't we stick with the theme? And oh my god, it looks like I've got a black eye. And just why are we trying to make things difficult for ourselves? Look at this idea, right? We order a new clutch cable because I've butchered mine, and we put the original clutch clutch thing. I'm not a bike guy. On the selector. So we have clutch, and then we obviously let go. Obviously, it's going to pop back because it's going to be a clutch, and then we've got the gears. That's way cooler, way simpler. Literally, all I have to do is just get another clutch cable and just run it through the car. Through the bike and just put it onto there. Hopefully it's long enough. I can't see why it wouldn't be though. And then that's going to pull the clutch instead of trying to put it on the pedal, which is causing an absolute nightmare. Hopefully the clutch cables are not expensive. Because I'd be fuming if I butchered mine and it is expensive. Right, so those cables, the clutch cable, it's 1 metre long. I've measured it. It should be absolutely fine. It might be a bit of a forearm workout doing it like that, but I mean, the bike people do it like that, so it can't be any different. And it's £8 on eBay, so I'm just going to order one of those cables and that's going to be our clutch. That's it. I'm not fucking around anymore. I can't be bothered. Let's just do it like that. And now I've literally put it like that. It's way cooler than doing it on the pedal. And it's going to be easier. So I'm going to order that and we'll see you in the next video.